The alien queen dismissed human warriors as legends until she faced one. Hundreds of her advisors, generals, and diplomats filled the wide hall, their alien forms whispering and muttering in various tongues. Yet, all fell silent as she spoke, her voice commanding without a single hint of anger or strain. "Report," she said, her sharp, violet eyes narrowing at the oldest of her advisors, a gray-skinned elder named Varu. Varu shuffled forward, carrying a holoscreen that glowed with tiny images of distant star systems. "Your Majesty," he began, bowing, "our scouts have returned from the outer rim. They bring news of humans." A ripple of murmurs spread across the council. Humans. That name alone had caused more debates and speculation than any other species in the galaxy. Some claimed humans were clever, some claimed they were dangerous, while most dismissed them entirely as insignificant. Zelthara herself had never worried about humans. They were weak, fragile, and emotional, hardly the type to threaten an empire as vast as hers. "Humans?" she said, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Those fragile bipeds, the ones who trip over their own shadows. What news could they possibly bring that demands my attention?" "They continue to travel," Varu replied cautiously. "Ships have been sighted entering forbidden sectors. They do not respond to our warnings. Their vessels, though small, show resilience and some anomalies in behavior." "Anomalies?" Zelthara leaned forward, the golden edges of her throne gleaming. "Explain." "They bypass defenses," Varu continued, "without engaging. They have entered restricted zones, avoided detection, and left stations intact. Some scouts report stations silent, no crews remaining. Only strange markings were left, as if the humans were there but never touched anything." The council erupted in shocked whispers. Zelthara raised a clawed hand, silencing them instantly. "Markings? What kind of markings?" Varu hesitated. "Simple phrases, Your Majesty." "Written in the Universal Code. One message was found at Station 77 in the Epsilon cluster. It read, 'We walked through, nothing else.'" Zelthara stared at the holoscreen, her mind calculating. Weak, fragile, emotional. They could not even maintain a real army, yet somehow humans had passed through an entire station undetected. No weapons fired, no alarms triggered, no ships destroyed, just gone. The Queen's lips curved into a slight, amused smile. "Legends," she whispered. "The human legends are just that, stories meant to frighten children of other species. A tale for those who overestimate them." She leaned back in her throne, eyes scanning her council. "We have faced tricksters, cheats, and spies before. I have no reason to fear a single human, much less an entire species." Her generals shifted uneasily, unsure whether to support or contradict her. One brave officer, Lurath, dared speak. "Your Majesty, reports are consistent. We cannot explain it. The humans do not act like any known species. If they truly can bypass defenses, then perhaps we should consider the possibility that—" "That possibility," Zelthara interrupted sharply. "That a species that barely survives on their home world is suddenly capable of challenging an empire spanning 1,000 systems." She laughed lightly, a sound like wind over crystal. "Absurd. No, Lurath. Humans are tales told by smaller species to scare one another. They are myths, nothing more." Despite her words, a small thread of curiosity had been planted in her mind. She had ruled for centuries, her empire expanding with precision and order. She had never faced an enemy she could not anticipate. And now, for the first time, there was something she could not easily predict. Days later, the humans made their move. Not with weapons, not with armies, but with calm determination. The Outer Rim reported their arrival. One human delegation, no more than a dozen ships, was approaching one of Zelthara's most guarded systems. Her council reacted immediately. "We must intercept them," Lurath demanded. "They cannot be allowed to enter our territories." "They will not succeed," Zelthara said. "Prepare observation only. Let us see what these creatures do. I want them studied, not destroyed. I will not waste my resources on myths." Even as the orders were given, Zelthara felt a subtle tension in the air. She had faced many species that underestimated her before. None had survived. None had even returned to tell the tale. Humans, she thought, would follow the same pattern. Weakness always loses. Always. Her observations began immediately. The human ships moved carefully, with precision that was almost mechanical. They navigated asteroid belts with ease, avoiding patrols and automated defense grids without setting off a single alarm. Sensors confirmed it. No weapons were fired. No shields were engaged. They simply passed through. Days turned into weeks. Stations that had once buzzed with activity now reported silence after the humans' brief visits. Zelthara watched from her throne as her empire's systems reported anomalies, doors unlocked, engines running, security protocols disengaged, all without a single human entering combat. "Curious," she murmured. "How can they achieve this without any real force?" Veru offered a cautious suggestion. "Perhaps, Your Majesty, the humans are using tactics beyond physical combat, intelligence, strategy, even patience." Zelthara smiled faintly, but her eyes were sharper now. Patience, yes. Intelligence, perhaps, but still weak, still fragile. Still legends. Then the reports changed tone. A human ship had been captured alive. Not destroyed, not evaded, but captured. The crew was unharmed, cooperative, even calm. The council was puzzled. How could a species so small and supposedly fragile make it through so many defenses without harm? Zelthara leaned forward, intrigued. She would see this human herself. She would test these legends. And she would prove once and for all that myths are just stories. The day arrived. The chamber was cleared except for her closest advisors. A single human was escorted into the throne room. Tall, though not by alien standards. Lean, not bulky. Eyes steady, unflinching, taking in the strange architecture and the alien beings. The queen studied him. He had no weapons, no armor, no visible tools, just a human, calm and measured. He knelt in the center of the room, a gesture that in her culture should signal submission. But Zelthara sensed something different. This was not fear, not respect, not defiance, something else. "Human," she said, her voice echoing across the chamber. "Do you understand why you are here?" He looked up, meeting her gaze. "I am here because you wanted me here," he replied simply. "I came because I have no other choice." Zelthara blinked. No hesitation, no lies, intriguing. "Do you fear me?" she asked. "Fear is for those who cannot act," he said. "I act, fear does not help." A murmur ran through the council. Zelthara leaned back, intrigued. Weak, fragile, this human seemed different. Perhaps the legends were true after all. The queen dismissed the council, ordering them to observe from outside the chamber. She wanted to study this human herself. She would test him, probe his mind, challenge his strength. And she would see if the myths of human warriors had any truth. As the doors closed, the human remained kneeling, calm, quiet, waiting. And for the first time, Queen Zelthara felt a flicker of uncertainty, a feeling she had not experienced in centuries. Something in him was different, something she could not yet define, something dangerous. And that thought, subtle and quiet, made her lean forward again, her eyes narrowing. Perhaps the legends were not myths. Perhaps humans were something the galaxy had not yet learned to measure. The story of the human warrior had begun. The chamber was quiet now, save for the soft hum of the lights above. Queen Zelthara sat in her crystalline throne, her violet eyes fixed on the human kneeling before her. He was calm, almost unnervingly so. The council had been dismissed, leaving only the queen and her advisors outside the chamber walls, watching from hidden sensors. The human's posture did not signal submission. It was not defiance either. It was waiting. "Human," Zelthara began, her voice echoing across the cavernous room, "you have been captured. You stand in the heart of my empire. Surely you understand your position." He lifted his head slowly, his green eyes steady and clear. Yes, he replied simply. I understand. I also understand that fear is useless, and so is resistance that is meant to fail. Zelthara's brow arched. Few beings could speak to her with such composure. Fewer still could speak like this without trembling. You speak as if you are not afraid, she said, but even the bravest species would cower in my presence. Even the fiercest warriors of your kind would bow or break or plead. I am not your enemy, the human said. I do not seek your fight, I do not seek your favor, I only exist, that is enough for now. The queen studied him, narrowing her eyes. Most creatures tried to deceive her to hide their true intentions. This human seemed unguarded, honest, but that in itself was strange. No species in the galaxy could survive without cunning, without strategy, without concealment. Yet here he was, kneeling calmly, revealing nothing but his own presence. Very well, she said. If you will not speak freely, then we shall try another way. She gestured, and a faint blue field shimmered around the human. Telepathic probes used for interrogation and memory analysis reached out to touch his mind. The human did not flinch. He did not resist. Instead, he simply observed, as if waiting for the probes to tire themselves. The queen's telepathy should have been overwhelming. It should have elicited fear, confusion, or at least discomfort. But he remained perfectly calm. This is unusual, one of her advisors whispered, hidden from view. None have resisted a probe like this. Zelthara ignored the comment. Instead, she focused, intensifying the probe, expecting to feel the human's panic. Nothing. Why do you resist? She demanded, her voice sharper now. Why do you not feel? Why do you not react? I am not resisting, the human said. I am observing. I do not act unless necessary. You are strong, yes, but strength alone does not decide outcomes. I know this because I have survived what your strength could not imagine. Zelthara paused. A flicker of curiosity crossed her features. He was telling the truth. There was no deception in his words, no attempt to manipulate her mind. He simply understood. What do you mean? She asked, leaning forward. Humans, he said, survive not by defeating the strong, but by enduring the impossible. By thinking, by observing, by refusing to break even when the universe itself seems designed to erase us. That is why your probes, your walls, your weapons, even your armies, do not scare me. The queen leaned back, her mind racing. Could this be true? Could a single human withstand such an empire's scrutiny without even a weapon? It seemed impossible. Yet the evidence was right before her eyes. He was calm, collected, unbroken. She decided to test him further. You kneel, she said, yet I sense no submission. You show no fear, no respect. You are not defiant nor obedient. Explain this behavior. The human lifted his gaze, his tone steady. I kneel only because it is comfortable. I do not kneel to you. I do not kneel to your empire. I kneel because patience is a strategy. Observation is a tool. Waiting is often stronger than rushing. Zelthara felt a shiver, small but undeniable. Patience, observation, waiting. These were not traits she associated with humans. They were survival mechanisms, yes, but displayed so deliberately, so consciously, that they became weapons in themselves. She rose from her throne and circled the human, studying him closely. Every detail mattered. His breathing, his movements, his reactions. Nothing betrayed any weakness, any emotion that could be exploited. It was unnerving. Human, she said, halting in front of him, do you understand that I could order your death right now? A single command and you would be gone in seconds. Your kind cannot survive this chamber without my mercy. The human looked up calmly. I understand, and I am still here. That is because you have chosen to study me instead of destroying me. That is your decision, not mine. I do not fear it. I do not hope for mercy. I simply exist. Zelthara's advisors outside the chamber whispered urgently. This was unprecedented. The human did not fear. The human did not obey. The human did not resist. He simply was. The queen narrowed her eyes. Perhaps it was time to escalate. She gestured and the doors of the chamber sealed automatically. Automated lights flickered and shifted, creating illusions of barriers, walls, and traps. Security drones hovered, sensors activated, alarms ready. Every possible defense of the chamber was engaged. The human did not move. Not a muscle twitched, not a flicker of panic. "Do you see this?" Zelthara asked softly. "I could trap you, I could confine you forever, yet you remain calm. Why?" "Because traps are only effective if one believes in them," he said. "I have faced worse than this. I have survived the impossible before. Your lights, your drones, your walls, they are nothing. You are still here, but your empire is irrelevant to me. I walk through your defenses because I choose to, not because you allow me." Zelthara felt a chill. The human's words were simple, yet precise. Every word carried weight and each carried truth. He was not bragging, he was stating fact, and in the logic of his words, he was untouchable. She decided to test him in a different way. A puzzle, simple but designed to confuse. A series of doors, each leading to another, some locked, some with security codes that required mental calculations. The human needed to pass through them to leave the chamber. Most beings would panic, most beings would fail, most would either break down or attempt force. The human did neither. He moved with calm, deliberate steps. He paused, observed, analyzed. He pressed panels in ways that no species in the galaxy would imagine. Doors unlocked. Traps were bypassed. Sensors were disabled. Yet remarkably, not a single alarm was triggered. Not a single guard was harmed. Zelthara followed him with her gaze, astonished. "How is this possible?" she whispered. The human stopped halfway through the maze of doors. He turned to her, his calm expression unwavering. "You built your empire on fear, on control, on expectation. I do not operate under your rules. I operate under survival, observation, patience, adaptation. You have taught me nothing new, Queen. Your empire is loud and that makes it fragile. I simply move through it." For the first time in centuries, Zelthara felt a seed of fear. Not of him personally, he had done nothing physically violent, but of what he represented. Humans were more than strength or weapons. They were cunning, adaptable, unbreakable in ways her empire could not comprehend. The human returned to the center of the chamber, kneeling once more. He did not speak, but his presence alone made a statement. He had passed every test, not through force, but through awareness, intelligence, and patience. Zelthara studied him carefully, trying to understand. Could one human truly represent an entire species? Could the legends be true? Could humans, weak and underestimated, actually hold a power her empire had never faced? Her mind raced, analyzing every possibility. One fact was clear. The human had not even tried to fight, and yet he had already won the test. He had proven something far more terrifying than weapons. He had proven that humans could survive anything, adapt to anything, and move through the strongest defenses without being detected, caught, or destroyed. The Queen finally spoke, her voice quieter now, almost a whisper. "You are remarkable, not in strength, not in weapons, but in thought, in patience, in persistence. I do not understand it, yet I cannot deny it." The human tilted his head as if acknowledging her realization. "You will understand," he said softly. "If you allow humans to exist, you will see it yourself. If you try to destroy us, you will learn it too late." Zelthara leaned back in her throne, her mind heavy. She had dismissed the human warriors as legends. She had laughed at their stories. But now she realized those legends were not myths. They were warnings, and she had just met one. The chamber fell silent. The human remained kneeling, calm, composed, observing the Queen as much as she observed him. And in that silence, Zelthara understood something she had never felt before, a quiet, deep, unnerving fear. Not of violence, not of conquest, but of inevitability. This human, small, fragile, unarmed, had already changed the rules. And for the first time, the Queen wondered if humanity had been underestimated, catastrophically so. The Queen's chambers were unusually quiet. Zelthara sat in her crystalline throne, her mind racing faster than the stars spinning in the systems outside her empire. The human warrior had returned to his calm kneeling position, but now she saw him differently. The admiration and disbelief of her advisors outside the chamber were nothing compared to what she felt. She was curious, yes, but there was also a new emotion creeping in, a sense of unpreparedness, even vulnerability. "What are you?" she finally asked aloud, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "You move through my empire as if it is a playground. You kneel before me as if respecting nothing. How can one of your kind survive everything the galaxy can throw at you?" The human lifted his gaze, steady as ever. "I am, like all humans," he said simply. "We survive because we must. We endure because nothing else is possible. And we learn from everything, even from those who believe themselves stronger than us." Zelthara frowned, intrigued. "Explain." He tilted his head as if deciding where to begin. "Your empire thinks in terms of power, weapons, fear, control. Humans think differently. We have faced extinction before. Our history is written in survival, in adaptation, in understanding the impossible. We do not conquer first. We observe, we endure, we adapt. And when the time comes, we act, not with anger but with certainty." The queen studied him carefully. Something in his calmness, his words, made her feel as if her centuries of rule, her military might, her careful control of countless systems meant very little. She had dismissed human warriors as myths, yet here he was. One human, unarmed, unarmored, and he had already passed every test she had set. "History," Zelthara said slowly, her mind turning over the idea. "You speak of history as if it shapes your present. What history can a species like yours possess that would make you so confident in the heart of my empire?" The human's lips curved into a slight smile. "History teaches survival. That is our greatest weapon. Our species has endured slavery, near extinction, environmental collapse, and wars that would have wiped out weaker civilizations. And we learned. We learned how every enemy thinks, how every empire operates, how every trap is set, and how to move through them without breaking." Zelthara's eyes narrowed. "You claim your species survived slavery, extinction, wars that could have destroyed you, and yet you walk through my empire without fear or hesitation." "Yes," the human said calmly. "Because we survive not by defeating others directly, but by becoming unbreakable in ways no one expects. A weaponless warrior can be stronger than an army if the warrior understands what the army cannot see." The queen stood, pacing the floor. She had faced countless species, each thinking themselves clever, each attempting to challenge her authority. All had failed. All had fallen to strategy, deception, or overwhelming force. Yet this one human, he had moved through her defenses, bypassed her technologies, and remained unbroken. Something stirred in her mind, a question she had never considered. Had she underestimated humans all along? "Very well," she said finally, sitting back in her throne. "Perhaps it is time to see your history for myself. Perhaps the truth about humans is recorded somewhere in the archives of the galaxy. Show me that your kind is more than stories and myths." The human inclined his head slightly. "Then you will see what humans endure, and why we are feared even when we do not fight." The queen ordered her servants to access the ancient galactic archives, those that held records of every species, every war, and every civilization that had existed or disappeared over the millennia. Hollow screens flickered to life around the chamber, displaying centuries of data. Zelthara's violet eyes widened as she observed the records. The human's history was unlike anything her empire had faced before. Humans had survived catastrophes that would have wiped out entire species. Plagues, starvation, environmental collapse, invasion by other civilizations. They had endured it all, and every time they had adapted, learned, and grown stronger. She whispered. "They survived everything." "Yes," the human said simply. "We do not have the largest armies. We do not have the strongest weapons. We do not always win battles, but we survive, and survival teaches power that cannot be measured by strength alone. Zelthara watched as the records displayed more details. Humans had been enslaved by alien empires long before the current age. They had been experimented on, their worlds ravaged, their species nearly erased, and yet they persisted. They had learned the tactics of their oppressors, the strategies of invaders, and the weaknesses of each empire that tried to destroy them. They had survived through intelligence, innovation, and unyielding determination. Her mind raced. If one human could move through her defenses without force, then what could an entire species, shaped by centuries of survival against impossible odds, accomplish? The legends, she muttered, they are not exaggerations, they are warnings. The human inclined his head. Yes. My kind is often underestimated because we are not loud. We do not boast. We do not fight until there is no other choice. That is why the galaxy forgets to fear us, until it is too late. Zelthara leaned back in her throne, absorbing the magnitude of the revelation. Her empire had built walls, weapons, and armies to maintain control. Yet humans, small and fragile by appearance, could walk through them as if they were air. They did not rely on intimidation or violence. They relied on understanding, endurance, and patience. Outside the chamber, her empire's systems began reporting anomalies. Communications were disrupted, trade routes faltered, and alliances shifted in ways she could not immediately trace. No attacks, no battles, only subtle, precise actions by humans that destabilized her networks. Your empire is fragile, the queen whispered almost to herself, not because it is weak, but because it assumes that fear alone is enough to maintain control. The human looked at her steadily. Fear is not strength, fear is a tool. But when one knows how to endure, adapt, and observe, fear becomes irrelevant. Zelthara's advisors whispered urgently through the hidden sensors. They had never seen their queen so thoughtful, so uncertain. The human's calm presence was not only unnerving, it was changing the way she thought. The queen finally addressed the human directly. If your species is so enduring, so adaptable, why have you not conquered the galaxy? Why have you remained quiet? Because we do not conquer for pride, the human replied. We act only when necessary. We survive first, and only then do we shape the universe to ensure our existence. The galaxy keeps testing us, pushing us toward conflict. We respond only when the choice is forced upon us. Zelthara realized something terrifying. The human's words were not threats. They were statements of fact. His kind did not need to attack to be powerful. Their strength lay in their inevitability. She watched as the human returned to his calm, kneeling posture. He was a study in patience and focus, unshaken by the grandeur and power surrounding him. And she knew, with a weight in her chest, that he represented something far greater than a single warrior. He represented a species that had learned the unmeasurable strength of survival. For the first time, Zelthara felt what few rulers ever did. The fear that comes not from weapons, not from armies, but from understanding that the rules she had relied upon were no longer valid. Humans did not play by her rules. They could not be measured by her systems. They were something else, and in that realization she understood why the legends had persisted, not because humans were violent or strong in the conventional sense, but because they were unbreakable. They were unpredictable. They were patient, observant, and adaptive to a degree that no other species could imagine. Perhaps, she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else, I have underestimated humans. Perhaps I have misunderstood them completely. The human looked up, meeting her gaze. There was no boast, no arrogance, just calm certainty. Underestimate us again, he said softly, and you will see what it means to be wrong. Zelthara leaned back, her mind heavy with new understanding. She had thought she was the queen who feared nothing. She had ruled an empire with unmatched power. Yet here she was, sitting in her throne, realizing that one human, and the history of his species, had already begun to rewrite the rules she had spent centuries perfecting. For the first time in her reign, Queen Zelthara felt a deep, quiet, unnerving awareness. Humans were not merely survivors. They were inevitable. And inevitability was far more terrifying than any army she had ever commanded. Queen Zelthara sat on her crystalline throne, still absorbing the revelations from the archives. The human warrior knelt quietly before her, calm and composed, his presence a quiet challenge. She had spent centuries ruling an empire without fear, believing herself unmatched in strategy, strength, and intelligence. Yet now, she felt the subtle tension of awareness that comes with realizing one has misjudged an enemy. The queen's violet eyes narrowed. "Human," she said, her voice measured, "you have proven something extraordinary. You move through my empire as if it were air, bypassing defenses I believed infallible. You have shown patience, intelligence, and endurance unlike any species I have encountered. Tell me, what is it that your kind wants?" The human's gaze met hers without hesitation. Space to exist, freedom to survive without being tested at every turn. That is all we desire, not conquest, not dominion. Survival is enough until the galaxy forces us to act. Zelthara regarded him carefully. Most species, when faced with such direct honesty, would bristle, resist, or attempt to manipulate. This human, however, spoke with calm certainty. He revealed nothing, yet shared everything necessary. She could sense the truth in him. He was not boasting, he was stating a fact. "You are remarkable," she said softly. "Not for your strength, not for your weapons, but for your mind, your patience, your inevitability. One human has changed the way I view the galaxy. One human has made me reconsider my empire." The human inclined his head. "I am only one, but the rest of my species, we endure, we learn, we adapt, we survive. That is what makes us formidable, not violence, not armies, but persistence." Zelthara's mind raced. Reports from her empire's outer systems confirmed what she had begun to suspect. Communications were disrupted, trade was destabilized, alliances were shifting, not through conflict, but through subtle influence, intelligence, and strategic foresight by human agents. Systems were reorganizing themselves in ways that left her empire uncertain. No battles, no wars, only quiet, unstoppable human influence. She rose from her throne and walked to the human, circling him as she studied every movement. He did not flinch, did not change posture, did not show the slightest sign of intimidation. He simply remained calm, steady, unshaken. "Your empire has ruled for centuries," she said. "Your systems have obeyed without question. Your armies have crushed all who opposed you. And yet you are uncertain now. Tell me, human, do you intend to destroy me?" "No," he replied simply. "I do not seek destruction. I do not need to fight you. We act only when forced. But you should understand something. Humans are underestimated at great peril. Underestimate us again, and you will see what inevitability looks like." Zelthara studied him silently. He had done nothing violent. He had raised no army. He had yet to even draw a weapon. And still, the galaxy itself seemed to bend in his presence. His words were not threats. They were quiet assurances backed by history, experience, and unyielding patience. The queen realized the truth. Humans were not violent conquerors. They did not seek to dominate through power alone. They dominated because they endured where others failed. They adapted when others rigidly relied on rules. And when the moment came, they acted with precision that left entire civilizations scrambling. A subtle shift began in the chamber. Lights flickered as sensors recorded the quiet movements of distant human agents. Some had already begun influencing trade, technology, and diplomacy in ways that undermined her empire's control. The Queen's empire, vast and powerful, was not collapsing violently. It was quietly, almost imperceptibly, being reshaped by human persistence and foresight. Outside the throne room, her advisors whispered urgently through the hidden sensors. "Your Majesty, we are losing control of multiple sectors. Communications are failing. Trade agreements are breaking down. There are no attacks, no sabotage, only influence, and it is all traced to human actions." Zelthara's violet eyes narrowed. "Not attacks," she said softly. "Not battles. Humans are shaping reality without fighting it. That is the true power." The human knelt quietly, observing her. He did not gloat. He did not mock. His calm certainty made a statement far stronger than any weapon ever could. One human, acting with awareness and patience, had already begun to reshape the empire. For the first time in her reign, Zelthara felt the true weight of fear, not fear of violence, but fear of inevitability. Humans did not need armies. They did not need weapons. They needed time, observation, and the refusal to break. And when the galaxy tested them, they survived, adapted, and grew stronger. "Perhaps I have misunderstood your kind," she said quietly. "I have dismissed humans as myths, as weak, fragile, and inconsequential. And yet, one of you has already altered the course of my empire." "Yes," the human said softly. "That is why legends are not told for amusement. They are warnings. Humans do not fight for pride or dominance. We survive. And survival teaches strength that no one anticipates." Zelthara leaned back in her throne, her mind turning over the implications. She had spent centuries assuming that strength, weapons, and armies defined power. She had been wrong. Humans did not measure power in the same way. They measured it in endurance, observation, and inevitability. A quiet realization struck her. This human and his species would not dominate by force. They would dominate by persistence, by unyielding will, by the ability to survive every challenge the galaxy threw at them. Her empire's walls, armies, and technologies were impressive, but none of it mattered if the humans simply refused to fail. She spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I see it now. Humans do not conquer. They endure. And in endurance lies power that no empire, no weapon, no strategy can overcome." The human raised his head, his green eyes steady. "You understand," he said. "That is why humans are feared not for violence but for inevitability. Do not mistake our silence for weakness. We act only when necessary, but when we do, the galaxy must bend, whether it wishes to or not." Zelthara closed her eyes briefly. She had underestimated humans for centuries, as had every empire before hers. Yet here they were, quietly reshaping reality, influencing systems without firing a shot, surviving trials that would have destroyed any other species. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm but resolute. "You will not be harmed. Your species will not be attacked. You will have space to exist, and I will ensure that my empire does not interfere. Perhaps there is more I can learn from you than I ever realized." The human inclined his head. "That is all humans ask, space to exist, respect for our survival, and the chance to act when we must." The queen's gaze softened, but not in submission. She was still the ruler of a vast empire, but her perspective had shifted irrevocably. Humans were no longer myths. They were a force of nature disguised as fragile bipeds. A species underestimated at great peril. Outside, her empire began to adapt as well. Other civilizations noticed the shift. Humans were no longer ignored or dismissed. They were recognized. Not as conquerors, not as aggressors, but as beings whose very existence demanded acknowledgement. Allies invited humans into councils. Trade systems adjusted to accommodate their efficiency. Technology shared by humans subtly redefined older empires. And the legend grew. A human warrior had faced the alien queen and lived. Not by violence, not by weapons, but by calm, observation, and endurance. Zelthara reflected on what had happened. She had faced countless challenges, many that had required her full cunning and strength. Yet this one human had changed everything. Without raising a weapon, without commanding armies, without striking a single blow, He had proven that human endurance and intelligence were beyond what her empire had anticipated. For the first time, she admitted quietly to herself, "I mistook silence for weakness. I mistook calm for submission. I did not see the inevitable." The human rose, still composed, still quiet, yet every movement deliberate. He did not bow. He did not speak. He simply stood, a living testament to the survival, patience, and unyielding determination of his species. And the queen understood. The galaxy would never be the same. Humans would not conquer with violence, but they would endure where others failed. They would survive where others would break. And the universe, whether it wished to or not, would bend around their inevitability. The legend was no longer a story whispered across the stars. It was reality. And the alien queen learned the hardest lesson of all. Underestimate humans and you face not defeat, but the quiet, unstoppable inevitability of survival perfected over millennia. The human looked at her one final time. "Do not forget," he said softly. "We are here. We endure. And that is more powerful than anything you can measure." Zelthara nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth. "I will not forget," she said, "and I will ensure that your kind is recognized, not as myths but as inevitability incarnate." The human turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. Not a step was rushed. Not a glance was given. He moved as if the galaxy itself had been waiting for him. And in that moment, every being in the Queen's empire knew a new truth. Humanity was no longer to be dismissed. Humanity was inevitable. And with that, the story of human endurance, intelligence, and quiet power became legend. Not because humans fought, not because they conquered, but because they endured. And endurance, the Queen realized, was the greatest power in the universe.